American courage on the Titanic. Some stories are written in books, but this one was written in courage. When the Titanic struck the ice and the night cried out in terror, the ocean expected fear. It expected panic. It expected people to crumble and collapse under the weight of fate. But instead, it witnessed Americans standing tall in the face of death. It witnessed fathers giving up their lives so their children could live. It witnessed mothers shielding their babies while the world collapsed around them. It witnessed strangers becoming heroes in the freezing darkness of the Atlantic. Because true strength is not revealed in comfort. True strength appears when everything around you breaks, yet you refuse to break with it. And on that night, when the greatest ship ever built began to sink, the American passengers aboard the Titanic proved one thing the world would never forget. A brave heart never sinks. The story begins on a crisp April morning in 1912, when the RMS Titanic prepared to take its maiden voyage. Towering above the harbor like a floating empire, it represented humanity at its highest point of confidence. A ship crafted with luxury, wealth, engineering, brilliance, and dreams big enough to cross oceans. More than 2,000 passengers stepped aboard, and among them were Americans from every walk of life: millionaires, immigrants, families, businessmen, mothers, and children, each carrying a hope so bright it seemed invincible. The first-class decks glowed with elegance. John Jacob Astor, one of America's richest men, walked hand in hand with his young pregnant wife, Madeline. He wasn't the picture of cold wealth people imagined him to be. He was gentle, protective, joyful. His eyes softened whenever he looked at her, as though he knew the world had given him something far more precious than money: the promise of a family. Nearby, Isidore and Ida Strausta, American couple who built the Macy's empire, enjoyed the calm sea breeze. Their love was mature, deep, unshakable. They didn't speak loudly. They didn't show off, but anyone who watched them for even a moment could see the truth. They were soulmates, two halves of the same heart. Benjamin Guggenheim, the American mining magnate, greeted other passengers with charm and humor. He carried himself like a man who had conquered life, not because of money, but because of spirit. Even in luxury, he remained kind, warm, and approachable. But the story of the American passengers was not written only in first class. Down in the third-class cabins, American immigrants held dreams even bigger than the Titanic's steel hull. Young families from the Midwest, workers from the East Coast, teenagers traveling alone, mothers with babies wrapped in blankets, they boarded the ship with hope as their only luggage. To them, America was not just a place. It was a destiny. The first 4 days of the voyage were peaceful. The ocean lay flat like a sheet of glass. Children played on the decks. Couples walked hand in hand. Friends laughed over warm meals. Some passengers wrote letters home, promising to send updates when they reached New York. Others took photographs, smiling beneath the great funnels that stretched like towers into the sky. No one felt fear. No one imagined tragedy. No one sensed the shadow waiting beyond the horizon. But fate is quiet until the moment it speaks. On the night of April 14th, the sky was unnaturally clear. The stars looked sharp enough to cut the darkness. The sea was so calm that even the smallest wave seemed to hold its breath. A strange, eerie stillness spread across the water, but the music inside the Titanic drowned it out. People danced. They laughed. They sipped warm drinks. They slept peacefully in their cabins. And then, at 11:40 p.m., the iceberg appeared. The collision was not loud. It was not explosive. It was not the dramatic crash people imagine. It was a deep wounded groan. a long, shivering sigh from the belly of the ship, a sound strong enough to change history. Passengers felt a faint jolt, a slight trembling under their feet. Some sat up in bed, confused. Others ignored it. They had been told the ship was unsinkable. Why should a little vibration cause alarm? But down below, icy water tore into the lower decks with merciless force. The Titanic had been struck in a place no ship should ever be struck. Within minutes, officers moved through the hallways urging passengers to dress warmly and come on deck. Confusion spread. Mothers gathered coats, fathers put on life vests, confused but calm. Children rubbed their sleepy eyes. Young men joked nervously. Couples held hands a little tighter. But when the truth became clear that the Titanic was sinking, every person on board faced the darkest moment of their lives. And this is where the American passengers turned tragedy into legacy. John Jacob Astor guided his wife gently toward the lifeboats. He helped other women board. He lifted frightened children. He held Madeline's face in his hands, whispered something only she heard, and then stepped back. She begged him to join her, but he only shook his head. His eyes said everything. Live. For our child. For us, I will stay. He chose sacrifice over survival. Isidore and Ida Strauss were offered places in a lifeboat, but Ida refused to leave her husband's side. She stepped back, looked at him with the tenderness of a lifetime, and whispered, "Where you go, I go." She handed her coat to her maid, one final act of kindness, and held her husband's hand as they walked away from safety together. Benjamin Guggenheim realized he would not survive. He returned to his cabin, dressed in his finest evening suit, and stood tall as the ship began to tilt. "If we must go down," he said, "let us go down like gentlemen." And he kept that promise until the final moment. But the greatest heroism did not come from the wealthy alone. In the lower decks, American families fought for their children with a strength the ocean could not overpower. Fathers lifted their sons and daughters onto their shoulders, climbing through narrow passageways that filled with water. Mothers wrapped their children in blankets and kissed their foreheads with trembling lips. Young American boys, barely old enough to shave, helped elderly passengers find their way up the stairs. Crew members, many of them American, ran through the chaos, guiding people with unwavering determination. They shouted instructions, carried fainting passengers, broke down doors, and refused to abandon their posts. To them, heroism was not optional, it was duty. The lifeboats began lowering, but there were too few, far too few. Yet in the face of this horrifying truth, American men stepped aside calmly, valiantly, heartbreakingly. They whispered final words to their loved ones. They hugged their children one last time. They stood tall even as fear chewed through the night. And this is the moment that defined them. When the world was sinking, they rose. As the ship tilted higher, music floated across the freezing air. The musicians, knowing their fate, played hymns to soothe terrified souls. Their courage was a song stronger than the Atlantic itself. Up on the slanting deck, American teenagers helped carry strangers. Young women prayed loudly, asking God to protect the children. A college boy gave away his life vest. A mother from Ohio sang softly to her baby so he wouldn't be afraid. A farmer from Iowa lifted two crying girls and placed them into a boat before the officer even asked. This wasn't just courage, it was humanity at its highest form. By 2:00 a.m., the Titanic was in its final agony. The stern lifted into the air, pointing at the stars like a giant pleading for mercy. In the remaining minutes, American passengers held onto rails, two ropes, two hope. Some hugged, some prayed, some stood silent, accepting fate with peace, but none surrendered to fear. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic disappeared beneath the Atlantic. The great ship that once symbolized invincibility became a shadow beneath the waves. The night exploded with cries, prayers, and silence. In the lifeboats, American survivors watched the place where the ship had been moments earlier. Their hearts shattered, but their spirits remained unbroken. Madeline Astor clutched her belly, knowing her child would never meet its father, but also knowing that child would carry the legacy of a hero. Children in the boats whimpered, calling for fathers who would never answer. Women hugged each other, trying to stay warm, trying to stay strong, trying to stay alive. When the Carpathia arrived hours later, rescuing the survivors, the world learned the truth, not about the ship, but about the people. Because the story of the American passengers on the Titanic is not about death. It is about greatness. It is about love, stronger than fear. It is about sacrifice, stronger than instinct. It is about courage, stronger than the ocean. And today, more than a century later, their story still whispers to every soul who faces hardship, loss, or darkness. It tells you, when life strikes like an iceberg, stand tall. When everything collapses, fight back. When the world grows cold, keep your heart warm. When your journey sinks, your courage must rise. Because those Americans aboard the Titanic left behind a message carved into history itself. You are stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and capable of rising even when everything around you falls. The Titanic sank, but courage didn't, love didn't, honor didn't, and neither will you, because a brave heart never sinks.